Hi, Zach Galley here to talk about some issues that have arose with Walmart and their ethical behaviors. Um, some issues have come up with Walmart in regards to overtime, pay rates, sexual discrimination, insurance offerings, and insurance availability. And are these items that Walmart faces really any different than a normal large business? I'm going to have to say that the issues that Walmart faces are not any different than any other large company of that magnitude. For example, Walmart faced lawsuits about requiring workers to work off the clock or having them stay to finish their job if they didn't finish it in their full 8 hours. There was lawsuits in a few of the states, and they were found guilty and ended up paying settlements. But when you compare that to the other market, there was also lawsuits against many other large companies such as JP Morgan Chase, Victoria's Secret, Walgreens. Most recently, though, in the news was MetLife was fined or found guilty and required to pay $50 million for unpaid overtime for their employees. Another example, which was T-Mobile. T-Mobile was fined and required to pay $19 million for people working off the clock, not paying them for overtime that they had worked. So those are the exact same issues that Walmart was facing. So similar issue, similar large companies, they're having the same problems. Sexual discrimination, that's still an issue with many others. In 1999, Chrysler was fined and a case was brought to the public court in 1999. UBS Bank was also had a lawsuit against sexual discrimination or a sexual act. Fox News, most recently, and most people have heard about, in 2016, there was a headline about a sexual discrimination lawsuit. So as you can see, a lot of these items are similar with Walmart as they are with the other companies. Now, Walmart might be in the news more, but that's most likely due to the magnitude of their business and the outreach of their states that they operate in. Another item that we want to talk about regarding Walmart was Walmart's leadership claimed that women were not interested in management positions. I would have to disagree with that. Based on the facts that were in the case study, 43% of the applicants for management positions in Walmart were female. Yes, that is less than 50%, but 43% is a great value. That shows an equal interest from both males and females in those management positions. Based off of Walmart's history, I would say that while they were applying, that number might have been higher given the culture that was created within Walmart. For instance, there's only 1/3, while Walmart employed many females, only 1/3 of the management roles were occupied or filled by females. So 43% of them applied, but only 1/3 of those roles were actually a female. Also, there was a salary discrepancy. You take a management position for an assistant manager or store manager, the average male was earning $104,000, whereas the equivalent role as a female was only earning a salary of $89,000. So given those two factors, that 30% of the management roles were female and that they were on average going to earn $14,000 to $15,000 less per year, I think that's why we would see a lower application rate of only 43%. I would venture to say that given the culture of low salaries and low fulfillment of females, that more females were put off or felt that they didn't need to apply because they weren't going to fill that role anyways. Another item that we want to discuss is Walmart's healthcare policy. So Walmart seems to have a lot of issues with their healthcare, and it's comparable to what I've experienced at my current employer, not to the extreme, but in the sense that they're revising their healthcare policies, they're revising their healthcare coverage and insurance plans to try to make them more affordable to reduce the cost. Now, Walmart has gone on, or historically not offered insurance to part-time employees in 2005. They did have a 1 year waiting period, or it was a 2 year waiting period, and they revised it to bring it down to 1 year after some publicity, to then make them eligible for healthcare coverage. Interesting fact that I found was that while they had expensive healthcare or high deductibles or higher out of pockets, their average, only 5% of their employees were on a Medicaid plan versus 4% for the rest of the national or US companies. So their number really wasn't that far off from the rest of the United States. But they did revise their healthcare policy again in 2014, which made employees who worked less than 30 hours ineligible or were not able to elect healthcare coverage. So there is a discrepancy, especially with the recent changes in the Affordable Care Act. I was kind of surprised to see that. So I would say that Walmart's healthcare policy, while maybe in the best interest for their shareholders, it's probably not in the best interest of their employees, in the sense that it's not available to everybody. And it seems as their structure with the higher deductibles and the higher weekly premiums is kind of a motive or an initiative to deter their employees from selecting that coverage. Not the best ethically for their employees, I don't think, to act in that way. But again, it probably is helping their shareholders because now they have a lower out-of-pocket or lower overhead for that insurance premium, management of those healthcare costs, those type of situations. Now, you might have heard, you may not have heard, but historically, based on this case study, Walmart strongly opposed unionization in the United States, when they expanded to Canada, even when they initially expanded to China. They have gone great lengths to prohibit or deter unionization in their stores. For example, in 1994, when they expanded to Canada, they bought all of the non-unionized stores from, I think it was called Walco, but there was 7 unionized stores, and they did not buy any of those due to the fact of them having a union. The other item that the case study asks is, should or is Walmart concerned with unionization? Because when they expanded to China, they realized how much they import from China, how much of their goods are made in China, and the stores that they had. So because of that relationship, or that dynamic relationship, and how much was at stake or at value, they actually worked directly with the All China Federation trade unions, also known as the ACFTU, and co-developed with them a union for their stores. So now all of their stores, I think there were 60 stores in China, they are now all unionized. While there's no mention that Walmart is worried about that unionization trend or concept coming to the rest of their stores, I think they need to be aware of that is a potential issue, because now that they've accepted them in a whole country with all of those stores, they run the risk of that becoming the precedent for their locations and their employees. Well, it happened in this state or this country, is it going to be allowed here? I think, or I would feel that with that happening, it was more in the best interest of the Walmart organization, in the sense that now they have a union, so they're going to be allowed to work in those states or those countries. They're going to be allowed to open more stores, have a wider reach. So the reason they went with the union, while those stores may be less profitable, it allows them to expand in an area that is very, very important to the Walmart organization. Now, when you come back to, like, say, the United States or Canada, I still feel that they're probably going to fight that unionization very strongly due to the fact of their history and how they have prevented that. They've gone on record or had issues with management firing people because they attended a protest. They've, made individual remarks from management staff about their personal views on the union, but as a company, they have historically fought against it. Now, let's turn the table and no longer talk about Walmart. Let's talk about some of the ethical views or things that we've learned throughout this course. I would say that if an ethical issue or dilemma was to arise, there is one person in this class that I think I've kind of resonated with, and that's going to be Blaine. And a couple of examples of where our viewpoints were very similar was in one of our weeks we talked about ads and if they were unethical or incorrect. We had very identical viewpoints in the sense that these ads, really none of them were unethical, but they were the viewpoint of the marketing team. Now, whether they made errors or had lapse in judgment, didn't do enough research, but it feels like they didn't have an unethical ad campaign or slogan, but what they did have, or it resonated with somebody, and those people that found an issue or were able to nitpick them were able to get enough backing by the community, whether it's their local community, whether it's the same people of interest, and then those items then became a larger issue. I think the bigger issue with the ad campaigns is that instead of sticking to what they had said, and this is one of Blaine's remarks, was the ethical issue isn't in the ad itself, but it's rather in the fact that they didn't stand behind what they said. They swayed their decision or swayed their comments or their videos based on the social remarks, the social response to what was said. So ethically, you need to say what you mean and stand behind it and be honest. Another example of how we have similar viewpoints is the sweatshops. We just recently talked about the sweatshops with Apple and Nike. While they employ sweatshops, we call them a sweatshop because they're paid so little. But when I did some analysis of the pay rates, these people are getting paid comparable to those regions. And if that's the job that they select because those are the jobs that are available to them in their community, then that is a good opportunity for them. It is also a good opportunity for these businesses to look at and consider outsourcing options. It happens here in the United States. You can outsource from one company that maybe has, for example, California, that's a highly unionized state, to have the same work or similar work done still in the United States, but in a different state that is non-unionized. Now, that is a benefit to the company because it lowers operating costs. It lowers amount that they're owed to get that same amount of work done. So while Nike and Apple maybe build a lot in China, for example, let's focus on Apple. Apple does build in China. China is known for their electronics, semiconductors, and the way that they can build things, retool their factories, and continue building in mass quantities. So it may not be feasible, nor would the population or the consumer of an Apple product be interested in those products staying here in the United States, because now the cost of development is going to be much greater. They may not be able to produce as many items. Is going to then deter consumers. They may not be able to come out with newer models and upgrade them as often. Again, a negative impact for their consumers. So the best interest of Apple is to use a, quote, sweatshop or a lower paying factory in China that can produce greater quantities. They can retool their factory to change the new design, allowing Apple to do more frequent upgrades, which the Apple consumer has become accustomed to. So unethically, no. Best interest of the organization, yes, but it's also the best interest of the consumer. So like Blaine has a similar viewpoint, and I think we would be on that same page that the people that are working are not forced to work there, they're choosing to work there. They're also doing what is the best available for their current situation.